computer and I will send it to you after. I
Thank you
should
so
grab
much.
your email address. If you could just send me your email address,
Okay.
I'll send it there. Cool. Let's do it.
Okay. Now, again, I want to thank you so much. I know you're incredibly busy with so many projects going on, and um, I'm so honored to have you to interview you.
I'm
Um,
honored that you thought to interview me. Thank you, Lorcia.
okay. So first of all, just can you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Curtis Stewart. I'm faculty in the chamber music department on at the Juilliard School. I play in the public quartet, which is a new music improvising string quartet. I also am the artistic director of the American Composers Orchestra, which tries to push the edge of what American orchestras can do from a composition perspective. And I'm a composer and violinist, and I've written a bunch of stuff. And my recent album was just nominated for a Grammy. And actually, today is the first day for voting, so I'm a little nervous and
Oh
excited.
my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ah!
Congratulations. Maybe if I put it out there and then I'll say like go vote for it.
Sounds
Uh,
good. Perfect.
yes. Well, thank you so much. Um, I actually wanted to ask you a few questions. So, first of all, I wanted to ask you, like, obviously you've gotten so far in your career. You're one of the leading artists in the contemporary music industry. So I just wanted to ask you, how did you get into the industry and what inspired you to do it?
Well, what inspired me really was growing up in New York, and just both. I got a little cheat sheet from my parents, who were both improvisers, composers. My dad plays jazz tuba, and he kind of revolutionized how the tuba can be played in a jazz setting. And my mom was a Greek composer and violinist, and her mom was an opera singer. So
Wow.
I would go to their shows, and I was just inspired to just hang out with them, and I wanted to be on stage just like. And when I played in just purely classical settings, which is, how I started studying, I was I felt like I was missing something. And
Mhm.
so my first thought was to just try out new music. When I went to the Eastman School of Music, I played in the new music ensemble and played in like the national park and played graphic scores that were like, they were little these bubbles, and I'm figuring out how to interpret all that stuff for the first time. And I met a band of people that were all interested in that kind of music. And so we sustained each other and kept each other going through it, even though college was so difficult to do extra stuff on top of what was required of us. We just really, that was almost like the most important thing for us to be doing. So
Right.
a lot of it had to do with having friends that are into it too. Then we formed Public Quartet when I left college, and we applied for the Concert Artist Guild, and happened to win back in
Yeah.
2014. And then they really accelerated what we were up to. So it's a mixture of like interest, passion, finding friends that are also doing it, and then also just applying for opportunities and not letting failure stop you, because
Wow.
you
That's
let your
a really
whole.
powerful message. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's harder, easier said than done. It's pretty tough. Rejection is
For
hard to.
sure.
Yeah, rejection is everywhere. It's like it's 90% no's. So
Yes.
when you get those yeses, just enjoy those moments.
Absolutely. And I think it's all, wait, I didn't know that your parents are both like contemporary like musicians. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Um it this I mean it's even cooler that they were doing this like when that wasn't like a thing, right?
Mm.
Like I feel like they were wait, that's so cool. I can't get over that. Well, I mean, no wonder you're like so you have so much inspiration and wait, what was like the best piece of advice your parents gave you to like
Oh, that's
when
a great question.
starting up in the industry? I mean,
Yes.
they must have shown you
Actually, they
some
told me not to be a musician. That was the advice they gave me. My dad was like, "You can get a degree, and no, you don't need a degree to have somebody tell you that you can play." Actually, that was an interesting feedback.
that's interesting. Yeah.
You get the degree to be in that community. You're around other musicians. You're around your teacher. You're being thought of for opportunities in that world.
Mhm.
You can always take lessons outside. You can always continue studying music theory. It's harder to get experience with orchestras. It's hard to,
Yeah.
but so you go to school to be in that community. So I also got a math degree when I was in college.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and
That's
so
crazy.
that kind of helped me understand that there can be these two worlds and you can still be pursue both of them with excellence, and they support to learn about the worlds that can support each other as opposed to feeling like you're spread too thin. Like
Mm,
understanding that difference is huge, especially when you're doing something that's more experimental and something that like you're not gonna like when I first started out doing improvised violin, classical violin stuff, I wasn't just getting gigs all the time because that wasn't a thing, like you said. So I needed to be teaching. I needed to be doing all these other jobs to sustain my life so it was
mm,
comfortable. So I didn't have to sacrifice my vision. Um, so I think that was probably the best advice I got from them, just to have something that sustains your life and your vision, and hopefully those things kind of support and kind of help you understand you understand the creative stuff through the more practical everyday and vice versa. Um, it's kind of funny, but since both of my
mhm.
parents were
Yeah,
quote unquote creative musicians and they started doing this thing, I don't see my work as creative in a way. I don't see it, I see it as like an extension of what they're doing. Like I'm trying to do what they did in a different way with different, with more focus in a certain sense and less focus in another sense. And so it feels less creative. It doesn't come from nowhere for me. I'm not sure how they felt about it. I should ask them that question.
oh, absolutely. Well, that's that's actually interesting because you saying that it feels like you're not doing something creative is quite shocking to me because I feel like whenever I see you doing something, it just feels so new and fresh and always so like out of like how could someone think of that, right?
Right.
But that's super interesting to me. And speaking of how, you started out being a contemporary musician and how you had to teach and all that, you know, you've been in the industry for quite a long time, I think, and right? And so have you seen like how has the industry changed in a way?
Mm. So, I got out of college in my undergrad in 2008. That's when I graduated. And and then we started quartet. There weren't very many groups doing like new music groups. There was Jack Quartet,
Mm.
that they were really seminal. There was, the Arditi Quartet. That's like but there weren't like very mainstream groups that were doing a lot of new music. Now there's tons. There's like the Izuri Quartet. There's the Ataka Quartet. There's t like pretty much every chamber group it has a pretty strong new music focus. Um, Not everyone, but there are many, especially in the quartet zone. So that's a massive change, meaning what was once way left of center is now much closer to center. Uh,
Mhm.
in terms of the industry, I think similarly, main stage presenters who would only listen to, Beethoven, Brahms, Mozart, that type of stuff, um, are more available to at least one new music piece on the program. They don't feel like that one piece is going to cause the audience to get too scared or to run away.
Yes,
And so we can
right.
talk about that. And then you can also frame concerts with that in mind. So, for example, my quartet, Public Quartet, we improvise on Dvorak's American Quartet using the
Yeah.
themes, in a kind of the way that that music was maybe made when he first heard it. And we use enough Dvorak that people in main quote unquote mainstream classical music are interested in it. They're not pushed away. And so you start there, and then you can push that edge further and further. Uh, so even if my vision was like, oh, I want to hear all improvised, all crazy, I don't want to know what I'm hearing. I want it all to sound magical and weird and crazy. Even if that is my vision, I probably will never pitch a program like that to someone in
Mm,
any time in the next 5 or 10 years. Who knows? Maybe I will, but um, the idea is that there's always a piece that like isn't inlit. Uh,
yeah.
so that's another change that people are more open.
Right. Yeah, maybe in like 10 or 20 years there'll
Yeah.
be like full on like contemporary program concert. I mean, I think I've seen some concerts like that, but there aren't like as many as like compared to a concert that has like maybe an orchestra concert that has like a contemporary work at the beginning and then they have the concerto and then the symphony. But maybe that'll change.
Well, that's
Um,
interesting. Another big change is that, there's in the orchestral settings, there's that 10-minute. concert opener, which has now become, it used to be the overture, but the overture is now kind of replaced by the new music work,
Yes.
as you said. So that's another change that orchestras are totally embracing this new music. Um, there are several organizations around all around the country who do all new music programs. That's not to
Mhm.
say that it doesn't exist. I'm just talking about the quote unquote whatever you want to call mainstream classical music, meaning like the New York Phil. What is what is the main chamber music presenter at Detroit playing? What is etc. Um,
Yes.
so there it does exist. You just have to kind of like look for it a little bit.
Right. Yes. And as you mentioned before, it's like 90% rejection, 10% that yes, right?
Yes.
And
If that,
in
maybe
your
it's
career,
97% rejection. Just go for that.
okay, 97% rejection. In your career, like what has those rejections consisted of? Like,
Mm.
those challenges. And do you feel that like it's become better for like more easier for contemporary, like young contemporary performers or artists now back compared to, when you were first starting out in the industry?
Um, so some of the rejection comes from just a review that you get a review that has
Mhm.
like they don't really understand what you're doing, and so
Yes.
they criticize. There's ways of them. They literally describe what every your exact intention from a negative perspective. So like
Mm,
something that you literally intended exactly what they perceived, but they're saying that that's a negative thing because they don't understand that you were literally trying to do something different than what been before.
yeah.
That's pretty tough to deal with. Other forms of rejection are, you just talk to a presenter or a concert or another musician or a composer, or you talk to your teacher or someone and you present an idea, even if you're in a chamber group and you have an idea, you present it. And then everybody's like, meh, no, next time. Or, no, that's not the right fit for this year. Or, um, I don't think this is my music. I don't want to play this piece that you're presenting. Um, that can feel like rejection, but you have to also remember that everything's kind of a collaboration in a way. And so you're just like, okay, right now you're not available for that. I can try you again later, maybe, or I can find more convincing ways of talking about this thing, or I can just play it more
Mhm.
convincingly so that you
Yes.
use that as a point of like departure. And in terms
Yeah.
of the environment for new contemporary music players now, I would say it's almost like more competitive because there's just so many more people. There's a contemporary music program at MSM, there's,
Mhm.
for example, at Juilliard, there's Axiom, the new music group is now part of the curriculum. Like you can get orchestra credit for playing in this new music group, which wasn't like that before.
Mhm.
Um, so new music is becoming more essential to our curriculum.
Yes.
Um, and it's appearing in competitions. It's appearing, so
Yeah.
there's a lot more competition around doing it. So that's
Hmm.
probably what makes it harder is that you have to really distinguish yourself. A lot of people, I was talking to some groups where they were saying, "Oh, I want to play music by underrepresented composers, and I think that's our mission." And maybe, like you said, 20 years ago, maybe that would have been way ahead of its time. But right now, everybody and their mother is playing music by underrepresented composers. And so you have to figure out exactly what your voice is.
Mhm.
Is it just the general thought, or is it, for example, my mom was Greek, and so I want to find Greek ties between Greek music and African American music. That's like I think that's a very specific thing. Or I'm from New York, so I want to,
Yes, yes.
I know these people who have mixed, and so this is an actual thing that happened, and I want to blow that up into a concert program. Um, so to find a really specific but also universal theme that people can feel, I think that's the real
Yeah.
challenge because there's more competition. You can't be as generic about what you program.
Yeah, that's such an interesting take. And I think yeah, before I started coming to PMP and I like did the semester of contemporary chamber music that we did and doing the competition chamber like contemporary repertoire,
Mhm.
I think I also had this kind of stigma that like in a way like contemporary music wasn't like like the usual things I played, like Mozart, Beethoven. It
Hmm.
was more like it was I thought it was just too hard for me to understand. That's
Mm.
the way I shot it. But then I think once you start playing it, you realize how much like complexity and how much to explore there is. And in a way, I find it more fun than just like playing what's been played like hundreds of thousands of times. And I just yeah.
I can tell.
I
Actually, when we worked together this last summer, I thought I could tell something had clicked differently for you.
yes.
And
Yeah, it feels like, I'm expressing myself like more when I'm doing these works. I'm putting so much of myself into it and also like thinking of new ways to play it. And I think that's like the joy of contemporary music.
yeah,
And
I think so too. Plus, you get to talk to the composer, sometimes,
yes, yes.
and so it's funny. I was just teaching I have teaching an improvised chamber music class at Juilliard, and so I brought a composer in. And
Hmm.
so I told them, it's like, well, now you have to face the responsibility. It's more than just improvising and doing whatever you want. That's part of it. But then you have to be able to see the composer's scowls and grimaces as you're messing with their piece. And so you
Yes, yes,
feel their spirit. And then you know that when you're free doing this certain thing, you're like, I can be totally free doing this because I know that the composer, it's coming from the composer still, even though you're making the choices. So
yes,
it's like you really get to have a conversation. You really get to own the piece
yes.
in a contemporary setting. Yeah, for sure.
My favorite part. Yeah, I on top of that, it's interesting that you mentioned like, we have to be more like niche in this what we ha the way we present ourselves in within the contemporary music industry now. Like I think my personal interest is contemporary music and also like technology combined.
Hmm.
I think there's a rise in like AI, the
Right.
metaverse, technology,
You
and
said
I
the metaverse? Oh wow, like the metaverse exists? Wow, that's crazy. Oh, you mean meta like Facebook? Okay,
yes.
got
And and
it.
I just think it's interesting, like if you could like connect those two.
Mm,
Like I've seen like the Hong Kong Phil do like a like a metaverse concert. I've
mm.
seen like AI music come up. And I've also seen like so many people like Mason Bates, like he does like um
Mothership.
yeah, music in combination with like technology, and I think that's so cool. And just want to know what your take on that is.
Well, that's kind of what I do too, but that it was just a matter of circumstance. So I was playing with my quartet, and then we had the pandemic, and so obviously I was by myself. I started doing stuff with my electronics, and I realized that I could just do that and then also play with it, and it still felt like music. It didn't feel like there was a backing track. And
Yes.
so personally, I just feel like if there's a reason for the electronics to be there, then you should go ahead and do everything and explore. But you want to be as virtuosic about that as you are with your actual playing. Not you, but one. Because a lot of people say, okay, yeah, I'll just hit play. That'll be easy. I want to do the thing that makes the
Mm,
most sense, which is true. You want it to be feasible. Just like when you're playing that Paganini Caprice, every choice you make, you want to be strong and convincing and energetic. You know,
yes.
it's still on the edge of technique, but you don't want to feel like you're on the edge. You want to we're just you're doing it, right? And so
Mm,
it's similar with technology. Anything that's new for you, you should be pushing that edge
yes.
that
Yes.
you're always feeling secure, but you're also making change. And that's the way, not making change, but you're also pushing the boundaries of what you've seen before. Because there's
Yeah.
very few things that are new, so I wouldn't go into it thinking like, let's do something new. It's more like,
Yes.
let's do something new for you. And then
Yeah.
and then push that, constantly pushing it so you gain more and more technique. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting that you brought up like during the pandemic when you were like experimenting with like technology. Like what was that like? Like can you tell me like specifically like what projects you did? Like I think that's so cool.
So I recorded my first album that was Grammy nominated was the first thing I ever recorded in my house. And so
Oh,
it was crazy because I had an old computer. And so the computer, every time I recorded, it would start like fizzing, like you could hear the fan freaking out because it was so old. And so I had to move the mic to a way different spot in the house.
mm,
And you could still hear it. So then I had to do all this crazy mixing stuff to like make it feel like that fizz was intentional. Um,
Mm,
so it forced me to actually create my own voice. I couldn't just hit record and it sounded great, which you
yes.
can do, but it forced me to find a specific sound because everything sounded so bad to me, you know. And so um yeah. So it was frustrating, but it was
Yeah.
also fun because it was a big experiment and we had the time during that, during lockdown to explore. And it got me kind of out of my head and not worrying as much. There was a lot going on at that time. And so it helped me to worry a little bit less, to just focus on this music.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time,
That's
but I want to ask you one last question.
Sounds good.
So, like, obviously, to you personally, technology was like a big change, right? So I want to ask, like, in the industry, how has technology changed the contemporary classical scene?
Wow. So the fact that it's a bit, I think the pandemic was crazy because there's so much more. People are so available for solo instrument with electronics now. That's like a
Yes,
thing,
yes.
and so it's becoming its own thing. Um, and like people are actually I'm booking more gigs doing that than I'm booking my solo violin with orchestra stuff. Because it's also cheaper that you have to just pay one person as opposed to paying a whole orchestra. So that's not, I would say that's a bad thing, but it's also people are more available to it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say it was so scary starting. So what I did was I tasked myself with recording and creating a new song every week
Oh, wow.
and sharing it on Facebook. So the
Wow.
idea was I was going to make a video, a piece every week or every other week or something. And so it was scary because I was using my voice, I was recording, I was videoing, I was writing words, and it was really out of my wheelhouse. I hadn't, but it was also the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was very vulnerable. So nobody was going to be mad about that. You know what I mean? It was a moment where
Yes.
I found a space where I could be vulnerable and it was okay. So a lot of times when you're doing something for the first time, one of the biggest steps again is like finding your people. So who can you share it with? Who can you put on a mini concert, informal concert? So you can just share pieces with someone and just share it and see what it feels like. Just so you can be vulnerable, but also safe. Because you don't want to, you don't want the first time you're putting yourself out there, you're doing something new, and then it's crickets. Because it's kind of like
Yes.
that's not going to cause you to want to do it again.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to put that out there so that people don't just jump off the ledge and never come back.
Well, this has been such an insightful conversation. I learned so much just now.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'm always so grateful for you, like promoting contemporary classical music to not only to like, you know, your audience, but also to like students, and like we just learned so much. So, and we
well, I
really,
learn I learn so much every time I interact because you guys force me to be my best self. Like I can just do things on my own and try my best. But the second I have to present it to you or I don't want to mess up. I'm the one that I'm supposed to be leading, I'm supposed to be guiding you guys or something. And I do mess up a lot. And I want to be my best self. So like when we join like this in terms of like age range, it's not about knowing or not knowing or better or worse, more experience, less experience. It's more like let's hold each other to a new ideal. That's the idea. We're gonna hold each other up
yes.
and support each other. So
Mhm.
I mean, thank you for even asking me. And I think I'm inspired by you because I would never have done this at your age. So I think I'm inspired by you. I'm like, what am I doing now? Who am I going to interview? What's my thing? I got to do that too. So I'm going to be like you when I grow up.
Oh no. Well, I'm so honored to talk to you today, and I hope we can like talk once more.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I always love talking to you,
Okay.
so you know so much, and yeah, thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll send you the video.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a
Bye.
great rehearsal.